What is going on, guys? This is the Ocarina of Time Randomizer Standard Season 8 weekly wrap-up. This is going to be week number 2/3/4. I know, I'm sorry. I had some things personally that came up and I wasn't able to do the weekly highlights the last 2 weeks. But we're here, and we have 20 top 32 races to get over with today. And boy, do we have some races. Up here on the board, on the screen, you can see the first 10 of the matches, and these are going in order chronologically. So hopefully there's no spoilers. There's no spoilers. There might be a spoiler. Who cares? It doesn't matter. We're gonna go and talk about all 20 matches today. And I'm going to do my best to, I had to briefly go through and figure out, what was up with these seeds, what happened, why did each player win, and there's one or two of them that I wasn't able to really get too much information from, and since it had been so long, I wasn't able to get enough information from the VODs themselves, because some of the VODs weren't available anymore, and that's not the runner's fault, that's on me. So, let's jump right into it. And we've got week number 2/3/part 4. I think we only really have one match in week 4, quote unquote. So I decided to include it. So we're going to start with the one that we see on the screen. What the hell's happened versus Ryotaro? A battle between our two former champions has happened. Our Season 4 champion in What the Hell's Happened, and Season 6 champion in Ryotaro, clashing it out. This seed basically was the ultimate who is better seed. Who could route better? Who is more execution heavy? Who could figure it out? Because honestly, this was a trip around the world. Any player or anything that you could think of pretty much came. Not everything, but realistically, we had a Frogs 2 having our boomerang, and pretty much whenever you see an item on Frogs 2, especially an item that you need for a medallion, you're more or less thinking, okay, this is going to be somewhat of a long seed. We had Saria's song on Ocarina of Time, which just guaranteed us all dungeons. So we had an all dungeons for Frogs 2 seed. Specifically, and Jabul just being required. Our runners pretty much raced against their routing and execution here, and the winner of this match was What the Hell's Happened. What the Hell's came out on top, and we'll be moving on to the winners bracket round 2, and we'll go and announce who they're playing, because again, I don't really want to spoil too much, but we'll go through who they're playing. And we'll get on through there. Sorry about the ping there. Second off is we have Mario versus Cinny. Mr. Mario versus Cinny. Mr. Mario versus Cinny. This is a match where early routing really just gave us an example of how important it is to route in general. This match showed us on items on 20 skulls and skull mask. Our runners at routing ended up becoming the key to winning here, as Mr. Mario ended up with the overall win here, and really kind of showed us how to route on the fly. I did comms here on Zelda speedruns for this match, along with Pyra, and yeah, this match was pretty good. Mr. Mario did end up winning here, which means that Cinny did end up dropping down to the losers bracket, but that's okay. You still got some work to do in the lower bracket, and you're definitely not out. Cinny is one of those players that can pretty much take on anybody who they want, same as Mr. Mario, and he got so much potential in these groups and so much potential in these matchups. I mean, in these 20 races alone, we got to see champions fight each other 3 different times just in these 3 matchups, and there was another champions matchup in the first week. So that just gives you an idea of what kind of caliber we are seeing in this season, in season 8. So moving on, we have Alexis versus Sanzu. Alexis being our number 1 seed and Sanzu being our number 32 seed. Don't have too much information on this seed. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit too long for me to be able to go back and check, but Alexis does show us how it's done. Alexis ends up on top over Sanzu. So no upsets here, and Alexis will be moving on to the winner's bracket round 2, facing off against Zabi, which we saw in last season, or in last week. Zabi did end up beating Seize in round 1, so we're gonna get a rematch, and we're going to cover the rematch of the finals from season 7. Season 7, it was Zabi versus Alexis in the finals, a German-French matchup, and we get a round 3, dare I say, because the winner of those two ended up 2-0ing, so we're going to get a third match for the rematch, and we're going to cover that in the next segment, which is going to be matches 11 through 20. Next up, we have Cola versus Keatums. Cola versus Keatums is yet another one I didn't have quite too much information on, but we do know there was an elusive hover boots and a light arrows just waiting for our runners in Stonewater. The light arrows being in Stonewater, and I'm not quite sure where the hover boots are. I'm just going based off what the runner said here. Cola ended up taking the victory here and will be facing off against Zabi. Not Zabi, very sorry. We'll be going on to the quarterfinals. There we are. Don't worry, Keatums, you still have another shot in the lower bracket, and Keatums is a very strong French runner, somebody who I predicted pretty high on the predictions, so I'd really like to see what they end up doing. Next up, we do have another. This is our second one for this week, or at least that week. We have another champion versus champion, and that being Marco versus ATZ. Marco versus ATZ shows us a 40 skulls hammer required for Fire Temple. ATZ did have a very thorough child one, but ultimately skipped the Desert Colossus song accidentally, which was Song Storms. This locked both bow and storms, or I'm sorry, bow and hookshot, which ended up giving the edge over to Marco, who routed pristinely throughout the seed. Honestly, this one, Marco, like pretty much in all of Marco's matches that he's played so far, there's not a fault that I could take in any of his routing or execution. There might be a thing or two here and there where you could be nitpicky on, but realistically, Marco's been playing so clean. It's like he wants that double championship title, and nobody's done it yet. So I think genuinely this could be the year that we might see a double champion, whether it be Marco, whether it be What the Hell's Happened, whether it be Ryukane, whether it be ATZ, whether it be Zabi. You never know. We could see a doubled up there. Marco ended up moving on and winning this match and moving to winner's bracket round 2, and we'll kind of go over who they're playing. I really don't want to spoil it before I get to it, but next up we do have another winner's match round 1. This one is Aeronaut versus Exodus. So this is just as far apart in seeding as the Alexis versus Sanzu. This is 31-2. So the Exodus being seed number 2 and Aeronaut being number 31. This was an intense matchup. This was a 50 skull seed where strength 3 was required in hammer, for the hammer in light trial. And whenever you see strength on 50 skulls, especially in a very competitive 1v1 tournament match, you go for the 50 skulls, whether it be passively or aggressively, that's up to you. But realistically, Aeronaut here ended up doing 50 skulls rather aggressively, skipping Ice Cavern, skipping GTG, two very dense locations, to go check Ganon's Castle for their items. And Ganon's Castle, the strength 3 did have the hammer, and I'd say pretty much got lucky there, because the hammer's not necessarily hinted, but needless to say, Aeronaut came out on top here, and this was definitely an underdog seed. This was an upset, to say the least. And Aeronaut's going to be moving on to winner's bracket round 2, which means Exodus is dropping down to the lower bracket, and we'll see them. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the episode. All right, number 7, we've got J-Bone versus Dabu Decker. Now, we're just going to call him Decker because I can't pronounce Dabu or Dubu. I really don't remember, and I'm just going to make a fool of myself. This is loser bracket round 1. So, J-Bone was knocked down by Keatums, who ended up playing Cola earlier, was knocked down by Keatums, and Decker was knocked down by Cola. So, you know, go figure, they end up playing each other. So J-Bone and Decker played today. Yet this was another elusive hover boots just chilling in the crater. Death Mountain Crater Fairy ended up having the hover boots here. And there's another 50 skull seed for our runners as well. This seed pretty much had everything you could ask for yet again. Beans were required for strength, Pierre was required, and honestly there was just a rigorous Shadow Temple. J-Bone ends up fighting off Decker for the win and moves on to our lower brackets in round 2, because he was already in lower brackets, but is moving on to the round 2 lower brackets. And we'll talk about that matchup. I'm looking at it here. We'll talk about that towards the end. So next up, we have Rock Chalk versus Sponge. This match is one I really wanted to watch. Rock Chalk ended up beating Floosh, which was the number 3 seed, and Rock Chalk's the number 30 seed, beat Floosh in round 1, and Sponge beat Volk in round 1 as well. So this is winner's bracket round 2, where Sponge was facing off against Rock Chalk, and you could very much say that this is an advantage for Sponge. Both of these NA players, as far as I know, both of these NA players, and very strong. Sponge is previous tournament runner-up, and honestly just one of the strong individuals that you think of when you think of, like, you know, top players. But this was a case where Rock Chalk took the edge, and you know, just to kind of go over the seed here, we had a dry early seed with nearly just a bottle 25 minutes in. As the runners started to slowly find their bottle, or find their items, including their bottle, Rock Chalk pulled a hook shot off of 10 skulls just under the hour mark. This pretty much proceeded to jump him ahead, because Sponge didn't check the hook shot there on 10 skulls for quite a while. So this was in a logical all dungeon seed for opponent's song, which unlocked the boomerang, the long shot, and the light arrows, but it's all achievable by reversing Wasteland and getting big pose out of logic, with both of the runners ended up doing that, which honestly that was so cool to watch. So Rock Chalk ended up pulling through as Sponge only got their first hookshot just under the 2-hour mark, with Rock Chalk already 2 items from Go Mode at that point. So Rock Chalk ends up coming out on top and moving on to winner's bracket round 3, or what we call the quarterfinals. I haven't revealed quite yet who who won the other quarterfinals, so I'm not going to announce until the second time around who Rock Chalk's going to be facing, but we do know, and we will cover them here in this segment. So up next, we have another one that I don't really know too much about, but I'm kind of gonna go over everything that I can. This is a winner's bracket round 1 between Ecola and Fur. I'm gonna refer to Ecola as Eco, by the way. So Ecola versus Fur, we have another skull seed, Rang and Dins on 30 and 40 respectively. Hammer's just chilling on 10 skulls with a shadow required. Ecola ends up taking the win just by, honestly, I'd say sheer experience. Fur put up such an insane fight. I was watching this match and, I mean, I didn't take too many notes about it, but just watching the match strictly for the execution and trying to take my own notes between these two, I ended up learning a lot. If you really do want to get better and improve, just go and watch Ecola and Fur for a little bit. Both of these players have been doing this for such a long time and very well deserved in the top 32 here. Just to recover that, Ikola is the number 4 seed and Fur's the number 29 seed. And you would think, oh, Fur's just the number 29 seed, it couldn't have been that close. You know, Ikola's just so much better based on the seeding there. But realistically, like, Fur was grabbing the items that Ikola hadn't grabbed for quite a bit. You know, had a couple of decent items pretty early on, like the hammer on 10 skulls that we saw here earlier in the video. He ended up getting that before Ikola. Anyway, so we're talking about Ikola versus Fur. Ikola is going to be moving on to winners bracket round 2 versus Tanjo. Yeah, versus Tanjo. We covered Tanjo in the first week, so we don't have to worry about that too much. Okay, so next up, we do have losers bracket round 1. We've got Seize versus Sanzu. So we do know the players that these players played against. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's a sentence I just said. We do know who these players played against. Seize ended up playing Zavi in week 1 that we saw, and Zavi did end up winning that one. And then Sanzu ended up playing Alexis. Both of these players losing because this is in the losers bracket round 1. This is insane. Seize's such an insane player. If you ever want to watch just to get better at execution, just go watch this dude. He's so good. I'm not trying to take away from his logical reading because, like, genuinely next to none. Just an insane player. Was a runner-up in season 6, runner-up against Ryukane. So that was pretty insane. Anyway, this was a seed of all time, dare I say. Big Goron Trade Quest had first bow with prescription. So you had to go get your blue fire, you had to go do all that fun stuff just to go get your first bow. Did have a lens and hover boots potentially path, which led to the treasure chest game having Din's Fire. So pretty much you could think the hover boots or the lens for the Din's is the potential path there. And I just completely moved my notes. Never mind, we're back. Seize ended up pulling out on top and is moving on to lower bracket round 2 to face off against the winner the loser between Marco and What the Hell's Happened. Yeah, that's happening. So that match hasn't happened in this yet. I mean, it has happened, but I haven't covered it yet. So we'll get on to the winner there whenever we get to that point. Next up, this is our 3rd championship match. Is this 3? Did I really cover 3? What the hell's happened, Ryukane? Marco ATZ. Oh, yeah, we got to move on to the next. We're on to the next set right there. All right, we got our music back. I don't know why my I don't know why my Discord's doing all that fun stuff, but here we are. Okay, so let's move on to the next set of matches. We have Ryukane versus ATZ. This is our 3rd set of champion versus champion match, and let's go and just drop in here. Another battle of the champs with our season 6 and season 1 champions respectively, and unfortunately one of them has to go home 0-2. This is losers bracket round 1, and so early in the tournament having to go home 0-2. There's 2 champions this season that are faced up against a predicament of possibly going 0-2 to just get dropped out of the tournament. It is very possible, just because you have champion playing champion. So with an intense match where pretty much the mirror shield was just the difference between our runners, the mirror shield was hinted somewhere behind Forest Temple completion, and Forest Temple completion was Composer Grave. So Composer Grave ended up being just where the mirror shield was. I don't remember if it was a magic or a Zelda's Lullaby behind Forest Temple completion. I genuinely just didn't write it down, and I can't remember the match for the life of me. I do remember the Mirror Shield being in the Composer Grave, and that's what shot Ryukane to the top, which means ATZ does end up going home 0-2, and Ryukane has a very long and hard battle ahead of him. But realistically, if you could say that you've knocked out another champion, then you're probably in good spirits to be going on through the lower bracket. Because in the lower bracket, some players are just going to work their way all the way to the top. It's very much possible. So next up, we have a battle to see who gets to the quarterfinals of the winner bracket. We got winner bracket round 2, Ikola versus Tanjo. And that's not the one showing up on screen, but it's an intense winners bracket round 2. Starts our runners off with an early strength to get a hook shot, hinted in DC for Baronade. But you don't get that Baronade item until the very end of the match. You really have to find something that's hook locked is eventually going to get your Ruto's letter. And when it comes down to it, the path eventually leads our runners to the final item, all the way to the Fire Temple to retrieve their Ruto's letter in the back of the ship. With Ikola quick to the retrieval, this pushes him to the winners bracket quarterfinals against Mr. Mario next week. Ikola does it again, sends Tanjo down to the losers bracket round 2, and will be facing off Mr. Mario next week. I believe it's scheduled next week. We'll go over the schedule later. Next up, the match that I had warned us about a little bit earlier, Xavi versus Alexis. We get the Season 7 champion versus the Season 7 runner-up yet again. These two players, it was a best of 3 last season in the finals, and Xavi ended up coming up on top. So Xavi ended up coming up on top here, and I'm not sure how we got lucky to get a rematch between the two finalists of last year's main tournament so early in the brackets. We are seeing Xavi and Alexis face off for a 3rd time on the main stage to see who makes it to the quarterfinals first. With a seed some may consider a jet, it seems that every move that Xavi made just paid out in droves. Early River netted him a hammer and bomb back, and from there the seed opened wide and pushed him into the lead early. Xavi ended up taking the win here, and he will be moving on to the winners quarterfinals versus, I gotta make sure I'm not spoiling it, versus Cola. Yeah, I definitely didn't spoil that. So it was Cola versus Keatums, and Cola ended up on top there, and Xavi versus Alexis, and Xavi ended up on top here. It was a very quick match and pretty close match, dare I say. It was just over 5 minutes apart, but still very close. And it's still very close to each other, just under the 10-minute mark. But realistically, it was just such a good match. You should probably go watch that. That's another one of those that's like, man, you're not only watching it because of the players, you're watching it because you're getting the experience that you get last year. Watching the finals yet again. And watching their two play styles clash between each other again, it really just kind of shows you the difference between how each player plays. Next up, we do have a losers bracket round 1, meaning one of these players is going home. This is Just Sam versus Schultzer, and Just Sam was lost to Flea in round 1, and Schultzer lost to Hyper in round 1. So these two players are going to be duking it out to hopefully knock each other down out of the tournament. Both runners had early hints to an available hammer, and bombs are just available in the graveyard. This opens the seed up tremendously. Seeds like this, they're going to punish you for rounding poorly. Not that that's what happened here, but both players did end up finding their first bow on Bongo Bongo, with another available in GTG. Because of this, we got to see pretty unique tricks that we usually or barely see in the tournament. But Just Sam did end up taking the win over Schultzer in losers bracket round 1 and will be moving forward. So that does mean that Schultzer is unfortunately out of the tournament. Just Sam will be moving onwards. Next up on the list, we do have Aeronaut versus Juke. Aeronaut versus Juke, this is a match where the Megaton hammer could be anywhere. Juke ended up doing nearly all dungeons to find his last item, whereas Aeronaut was able to secure the hammer mid-game to find his path to victory with a hammer, French Vanilla, in the Fire Temple. Juke knew of this big chest that was chilling in the Fire Temple, had put Auroras down in Fire Temple, but just never went back for it. So Aeronaut will be moving on to the winner's bracket quarterfinals, and Juke will be moving down to loser's bracket round 2, but that's okay, he's still got another chance. Next up is going to be Marco versus What the Hell's Happened. This is another champion versus champion. You're going to hear it. I mean, I think this is the last one I'm going to talk to you about. Champion versus champion with yet another former champion matchup. Our season 2 in Marco. In season 4, What the Hell's Happened, champions face off. With the 50 scroll seed for Kokiri Sword and Requiem on Ocarina of Time, we had ourselves another long seed for our runners to take on. Marco ended up coming out on top, solidly putting himself inside the winner's bracket quarterfinals, and we'll go and cover who they're going to be playing next. But this was one where I ended up seeing shortly on the side there, and it did seem like What the Hell's was missing. It's like he was kind of missing some checks, kind of forgetting some checks here and there. Didn't play perfectly, but realistically it was still a very competitive matchup, and I really feel for this one because it's not every tournament that you just get early champion versus champion like we do in this tournament here. Next up, we do have Aosuna versus Fur. This is losers bracket round 1, so both of these players are fighting to stay in the tournament, keep their tournament alive. We do have a vanilla Nocturne of Shadows for a Shadow Medallion, for a vanilla Shadow Medallion. These runners had a triple bongo path, as it seemed the seed revolved around them. Now, because you have a triple bongo path and it's a vanilla bongo, you're more than likely going to get some of the items that you need for other dungeons on Bongo Bongo due to hint prioritization. Thank you very much. Season 8. So Aosuna ends up taking down Fur in the lower bracket round 1, which will unfortunately be the end of the tournament for Fur, but they did, put up a hell of a fight against her opponents. Next up, we do have Fabio versus Ango. I know I got them mixed up here on the screen, but I didn't have too much information between these two, so I ended up coming back to this one and just pretty much put in there, dude. Like, it's just a true match of showmanship here. Not much seed info, but we really do just have two beasts playing each other for the right to progress in the lower bracket to play Juke in the next round. Fabio comes out on top and takes on Juke in lower bracket number 2. Next up, we do have Volk versus Floosh, and this is one that I looked at and I was like, there is no way in hell this is a lower bracket round 1 matchup. Volk losing to Sponge in round 1. Floosh losing to Rock Chalk in round 1. This makes me rethink everything. Whenever I'm looking at tournament champion versus tournament champion, this right here is very much a tournament champion versus tournament champion of different varied sorts. This is an insane French matchup in the lower bracket round 1, and one of these runners unfortunately will be going home in this high stakes matchup. With a strength on our favorite dancing dad being our strength 3, Volk ends up coming out on top with the hammer, strength 3 locked in Ganon's Castle Light Trial. Volk ends up moving on to lower brackets round 2 and faces Keatums in another legendary French matchup, who's coming off a loss from Cola. Last but certainly not least, we're going to be going over Drunas versus Cine. Now, this actually happened yesterday. And again, I am running so behind, but I'm doing my very best to catch up. This was a long shot difference, where the next check in Fire Temple right after the Fire Boss Key had your long shot. This was the item that the loser of this match ended up missing and didn't go back for. With an empty Spirit Temple and GTG and Forest completely inaccessible, logically, our runners had few places to turn to look for their items. Most runners like to avoid future ventures in the Fire Temple for sheer slowness and check density, but this time it paid off, which moves Drunas on to round 3 in the lower brackets against a winner between Tanjo and Just Sam, which has yet to happen. I would like to go over quickly. There were 4 matches in this set of 20 matches that were 5 minutes apart at least. Compared to last week, that tells you that this set was, I mean, to be fair, there was a lot of, forfeits and did not finishes. There's probably there's actually a couple of people for sure that could have finished but did not. There were only 2 matches within 2 minutes of each other, and no matches within 60 seconds of each other. I'm sure we're going to get more as we progress through the tournament. But there were 5 notable upsets here, if you're just going based off of skill and rank. First one, Aeronaut versus Exodus. Aeronaut ended up coming out on top over Exodus. This was a number 31 to a number 2 seed. And Exodus ended up losing that match, which is unfortunate, but upsets do happen. And this just tells you, just because the higher seed may be favorable here doesn't mean that the lower seed cannot take a match from them. Rock Chalk versus Sponge. This is another upset. Not as crazy as I would imagine would be an upset, but it is still an upset. Zavi versus Alexis. You're probably like, wait, Zavi won that. Zavi's the champion of last year. Yeah, but Alexis was number 1 seed. Zavi was number 17 seed. Yes, qualifiers are way different from 1v1s, but this match seriously could have gone either way. And on paper, anybody other than the number 1 seed is the underdog. Aeronaut versus Juke. Aeronaut going to winners bracket quarterfinals is something I couldn't have predicted. I predicted Juke to actually win this match, and Juke did not. This is kind of huge for Aeronaut, and I personally feel this is an upset, and I love to see this kind of stuff go on. This puts Aeronaut into the quarterfinals. And the player that Aeronaut will be playing in the quarterfinals will be the winner between Hyper and Flea. We'll get into that match here in a minute. Bulk versus Floosh. I feel like Bulk coming out on top was definitely an upset. Bulk is a SGL tournament champion online this year. Floosh is a tournament champion, multiple tournament champion, very, very good across the board. And honestly, I just felt like this was an upset. Yes, Bulk is insane and should not be undervalued, but I do believe this was an upset. I do believe that Floosh was the favored one going into this match. If you were probably going to put up a poll, you'd probably see like a 55 to a 60% towards Floosh and like a 35 to 40% towards, a 40 to 45% towards Volk. So let's go and talk about the matchups that we have currently. We have winners bracket quarterfinals, and we have 3 of the 4 decided. We have Zavi versus Cola, E-Cola versus Mr. Mario, Aeronaut versus To Be Decided, and Rock Chalk versus Marco. I don't think anybody can predict these turnouts. And the losers bracket, the lower bracket still has some work to do. They're working on round 3 right now. All the round 2 matchups are set, but only 2 of the round 2 matchups have actually happened. I did want to go over a couple of things that happened. 3 things happened in this tournament so far. One, there is a rematch between Flea and Hyper. A rematch was decided upon after some deliberation with the tournament team. So Hyper and Flea's match has yet to commence. And then there were 2 dropouts. And the 2 dropouts were Exodus and Sponge. So those 2 were already in the lower bracket, but ended up taking their loss in the lower bracket. So that means that Drew was set to face off Exodus in losers bracket round 1. Drew ended up moving on up to losers bracket round 2. Excuse me. And that's where Drew played Cine in losers bracket round 2. And is one of the first people in losers bracket round 3. And Sponge ended up dropping out. Both of these players, they more than likely had personal reasons for doing so. No hate towards them whatsoever. Please respect their decisions. As Sponge would have been playing off against J-Bone in losers bracket round 2. But because of the drop, J-Bone ended up moving up to losers bracket round 3. So Drew and J-Bone are both respectively in losers bracket round 3. And nobody else is currently at the moment. So, do we have any matches lined up? Yeah, of course we do. Of course we have matches lined up and ready to go. Let's see. Oh, I literally had it right here, and I don't know why I didn't click it. So, the next match is Alexis versus Ryukane. This is losers bracket round 2. This is a huge match. Alexis versus Ryukane is going to be happening at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Thursday, today, the day I'm recording it. This is not set to be restreamed on English Zelda speedruns yet, but it is going to be restreamed on Ecola. It's twitch.tv/Ecola, ICOLA__. Next up, we have winner bracket quarterfinal Rock Chalk versus Marco. Going to be playing off Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do believe this is going to be restreamed on Zelda Speedruns, and it will be updated in the event calendar on the Zelda Ocarina of Time randomizer Discord. Next up, we have Zavi versus Cola, another winner bracket quarterfinal. This is going to be played Saturday, January 25th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This will be restreamed in French and German. I believe German, it's going to be on OoTR, and in French, it's going to be on Zoro Disco. So this is a German matchup, and the German will end up making it to the semifinals in the winner's bracket. But will it be Zavi or will it be Cola? Then we have losers bracket round 2, Tanjo versus Just Sam. This is going to be an elimination match. This will be restreamed over on Poppy Grunt in French currently. And then let's see, losers bracket round 2, Juke versus Fabio. This is going to be an insane match. This does not have a restream currently, but that's going to be happening Saturday, January 25th at 2:30 p.m. Winners bracket quarterfinal Ecola versus Mr. Mario is going to be happening Sunday, January 26th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No English restream currently, but we do have a French restream guaranteed at twitch.tv/Marco. We have losers bracket round 2. This is an insane matchup, Keatums versus Volk. And this is set for Tuesday, January 28th at 2:30 p.m. And I believe that's currently it. That's everything that we have set and scheduled currently. Just to recap with Challenge Cup, we're not going to go over Challenge Cup today. We're already sitting at 40 minutes. So I really didn't want to get this far into this. But Challenge Cup, right now they're finishing up. Most of the matches have been completed. We're kind of gonna go over the group stages in next week because I'll have more time and I'm not going to be covering all of top 32 as well. And I'll kind of go over the the winners or projected winners for their groups respectively. That is it. We are completely done. This is week 2.3.4.5, whatever you want to call it. And we will see you again next week. Thank you so much. If you stayed this long, I appreciate you. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Because I know I will. We've got some matches to watch, baby. I'll see you there. See ya!